Hello and welcome to HMG Network, brought in DC Metropolitan. My name is Freeman Singirankabo, and thank you for joining us of our Untold stories from Rwanda. So, guys, I want to give you a huge welcome to all of you. And today, as you know, we are going to be focusing on our stories, our journey, our surveillance. We've got some special going on today. And we have, in particular, one of our queens who is going to be dropping it down like there is nobody's business. And our moderator for today is going to be none other than Claude Gatebuke, who's the executive director for the African Great Lakes Action Network. Claude Gatebuke, brother, how are you?
Doing pretty good, Freeman. And as one of Africa's greatest sons, Shaka Sali says, hugely terrific.
Thank you, brother. Man, take it away. I cannot wait. For our conversation today, especially that we have the queen in the house. So, brother, do what you do best, and I'm all yours, guys.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And before we start, I just wanted to share with the audience that we will provide a link later on in this conversation where you can just keep watching the description, where you can join us on Zoom. We will select randomly a few people to ask or interact with our guest, which is something new that we're doing now. And hopefully you guys will enjoy the experience. In addition to that, we also have a co-host today that will will handle most of the questions and comments coming through YouTube and Facebook. So we ask that you share the links right now, the YouTube links and Facebook links. And for those of you who are watching us on your local televisions, please invite your neighbors, bring them into the conversation, because this is going to be an important conversation. The focus today is, although it starts in Rwanda, it's actually an international issue. We have a personal testimony by Natasha Abingeneye, who I'm very excited to host today. She's a member of Jambo, ASBL, which is a Belgium-based advocacy organization. And she's going to tell not only her personal story, but we're also going to have a wider conversation about international complicity, the international players in transnational kidnappings and assassinations of especially Rwandans, but not always Rwandans, although mostly it's Rwandans. The story that's most famous, the most famous kidnapping story today is the story of Paul Rusesabagina. Most of you watching probably cannot find Rwanda on the map, but hopefully by the end of this conversation, you'll have looked at the map of Africa, looked for Central East Africa between the Congo and Tanzania. Those are the two largest countries that pretty much mark where Rwanda is. It's right in between those two. Most of you probably know the country from watching the film Hotel Rwanda, which is why I make the reference to the kidnappings, because the real life hero of that movie, who was played by Dan Chiro, his name is Paul Rusesabagina, was kidnapped 8 months ago now, or maybe almost 9 months ago, in August of 2020. And he is in custody in Rwanda. And this is similar to the conversation that we're going to be having. And so we hope that you share this conversation with others. We hope that what you learn here, what you witness here, you will share with others, because when you're a witness to something, you become responsible. You are responsible for sharing it. So witnesses are responsible, and we welcome all of you witnesses to witness this conversation. And without further ado, or actually before I bring on our guest, I want to thank our sponsors today. And our sponsors are Black Star News, Friends of the Congo, AGLAN, or African Great Lakes Action Network, and HMG Network. We have a statement before we start in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Palestine that was submitted by Friends of the Congo, Atlanta. And I want to start with that statement before I introduce our guest. And the statement is, Comrades, Nakba, 1948 to 2021 and beyond. Today, we lift up the memory of the great catastrophe. We also stand in solidarity with our long-suffering brothers and sisters in Palestine. We call on all of us who value the principles of human rights and dignity to rally to this urgent call at a time such as this, when each minute can be measured in lives lost, buildings and homes destroyed, and land captured. We call on those whose governments fund the forces of terror that occupy Palestine, who provide the political license for this ongoing slaughter, to demand that their representatives call for defunding of this violent colonial campaign being waged by the apartheid regime. We call on the international community to live up to its pledge of never again after the end of the Imperial War in 1945. We honor Patrice Lumumba's message in relation to our people in the Congo and find it commending that raise our voices and act as if we can to support the Palestinian, as loud as we can, to support the Palestinian people in this hour of need. And we have a quote from the great Pan-African Patrice Lumumba that says, "We are not alone. Africa, Asia, and the free and liberated people in every corner of the globe will forever remain at the side of millions of Congolese who will not abandon the struggle until the day when there will be no more colonizers and no more mercenaries in our country." And the statement continues, "Our solidarity is forever informed by our ancestor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s noble observation that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. From the rivers to the sea, Palestine will be free." Friends of the Congo, Atlanta. And thank you, Friends of the Congo, for sponsoring us. And thank you, Friends of the Congo, Atlanta, for submitting this statement. And look forward to the conversation next week, next Saturday, on this same network, same time. We have a conversation with our Pan-African, the global African, from all over the world. Those who are known as Americans and Caribbeans, and those of us who were born on the continent, the global African. We're going to have a solidarity event, and it all brings us back to a conversation similar to this and how we can all work together to make the world a better place. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, Natasha Abingeneye. Welcome. Welcome to HMG, and excited to have you in this conversation.
Hi, Claude. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone who's following us. I'm so excited to be here. I'm just as excited as I am nervous. It's important to me to be here, to be able to speak up and tell my story. It's part of my personal journey. Through my healing, it's important that I'm able to share today. I also think, given the current situation, the current stories we hear about, it's important also to stand in solidarity with everyone who's going through similar cases today more than ever, and also to everyone who's watching, all the witnesses. I think it's important that we start understanding the mechanisms behind these kind of ordeals and situations, so we can actually be able to ask for some accountability. So I'm so happy and excited. I hope I won't break down through the whole process. But thanks to the studio for having us, all the sponsors. I'm very, very excited.
Yeah, don't worry if you break down. We have Freeman here, you know, our resident psychologist, right? Freeman, hopefully you'll assist us if we break down, right?
We should be all right. I know I have a full faith in our queen, and she's going to be marvelous. I just can't wait for her to drop the microphone. That's all.
All right. So let's get into the story. Your story starts similar and I know your story, so this is more for the rest of the world to actually, you know, get to know the story. And you know, sometimes people see us laughing and smiling during these stories, but when you've gone through trauma and have, you know, at least dealt with it a little bit, you can you can laugh about some of the experiences, some of the details. And, you know, Freeman told his story. I can't forget the part where, you know, his father jumps over the fence and falls in a really bad place. You know, things like that. So there you might break down, but you're probably going to laugh also at some point during this broadcast. At the same time, this is a very serious story. It starts similar to how we all ended up where we are now. It starts as you are fleeing violence in Rwanda. Tell us a little bit about, you know, this story. How does it start?
Right. Indeed, it starts like the story of thousands, if not millions, of Rwandans with the genocide in 1994 and the war that ensued. My family fled and we were turned apart, we were separated for many, many years. And it wasn't until 2002 that I, for one, started reliving again. That's when my family got reunited after several years of living separated. I went from being a privileged kid to being near homeless, like many, many, many Rwandans, and finally getting into some safety was when we were reunited with my dad and the rest of the family in 2002. It didn't last long though.
Yeah. I just want to share with you. The studio did a little bit of digging, so we have some pictures actually before that separation. But keep going. So hopefully the studio can share with the audience.
Well, I hope you chose well your pictures. So indeed, after being separated for many years, in 2002, we finally lived again under one roof. And that's when I started living again, having hope again, and looking towards the future because I was with Dad again. But this didn't last long, and that's where my story begins because it lasted only 3 years. So in 2005, my dad was taken again from us, and this time permanently. So it starts there. That's where I would say my journey began. Because in 2005, my dad got approached by workers of the ICTR to engage in a collaboration looking for the truth, to uncover the truth.
Just real quick, Natasha, the ICTR is the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, which is the UN court. For the audience, because a lot of the audience is not going to know what the ICTR stands for. But when we talk about the ICTR, we're talking about a UN court that is based in Arusha, Tanzania, that was set up to try people responsible for genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other crimes, major crimes, political crimes committed during the year of 1994, the whole year of 1994, January 1st to December 31st, 1994. So just so that the audience has context of what the ICTR is. So now he's approached by the ICTR to establish the truth. By the way, that was part of its mission. It was to establish the truth and to contribute to truth and reconciliation for Rwanda moving forward after the horrific genocide, which we all survived and fled Rwanda after this, not only genocide, but a 4-year civil war that was very violent, that had killed millions of people.
Right. So indeed, you understand the importance of the ICTR as an institution. So when they approached my dad to take part in establishing this truth, which is so important for all of us, of course, he agreed to it. He actually jumped in there saying, okay, very willingly, to contribute in some sort in bringing about the truth of what happened in that year, 1994, that was so hurtful for all of us. So that's how it started initially. Unfortunately, as the weeks and the months of collaboration went on, this collaboration was headed, of course, by a team of investigators who were reporting to the prosecutor himself. But when this collaboration started, my dad was asked and he was signified that he had to collaborate or else his indictment was ready, that he would be charged himself for crimes against, crimes of genocide or very other mass crimes or whatever that they were pursuing him for. So they basically
blackmailed him into talking to them
right from
by
the start.
threatening that they had an indictment against him versus?
First, they used many tricks. They used what they actually love to do is using your close friends to convince you into engaging in the conversation. Once my dad was in the conversation, they threatened him to do what they wanted, or else there will be consequences. So that's where the blackmail starts, where you are supposed or expected to give certain facts or contribute to whatever story they want to do, or else, and that's where it becomes very weird for me, or else you have an indictment that is there. So where is the sticking of the truth? But how they got my dad to engage there is a very old trick that they use, which is using your close friends. So my dad was convinced to engage in these conversations with these investigators by one of his best friends, who was actually, as far as I can remember, he was part of our family. We grew up together with his children. This was home. He was actually also my godfather for my Holy Communion. That's just to tell you how close we were. This is Bagaragaza Michel, who is the guy that was tasked with this effort to have my dad engage in the conversation. So it was really using somebody close to you, because of course, obviously, you may have some reservations, but they used Bagaragaza to convince him to engage. And once they've done that, of
So
course,
this is again, like you said, this is your godfather. So this is somebody very close to your family. Yeah. This is also your dad's best friend that is convincing him to basically work with the court. But what was the friend asking? Was it to establish the truth, or what did Bagaragaza want from your dad?
Actually, Bagaragaza was acting like a broker. He was giving my dad all the necessary, let's say, reassurances that he needed, that this was going to be an actual conversation around the truth. So he served as, I don't know, an extra argument. He was the one vouching for this process, because he himself was actually engaged also in this kind of talks. So my dad was very clear about what he was going to do. But Bagaragaza was always being the one to convince him and tell him, of course, you're going for the truth and this and that. But later on, we found out that a lot of the material that were being used to blackmail my dad emotionally were actually provided by this very same man. He himself, being also trapped in this kind of ordeal, goes to show how far they will go if they need you to do anything. That includes also betraying your own people. That includes also doing yourself things that you wouldn't do normally, and that's what happened. So once my dad was in here, in these talks, in this conversation, the trap was set. It was either you speak and sign on the declarations that we want, or you face yourself charges, and if you actually don't convince us, you may face worse. So that's how this tension started. So my dad started seeing them regularly. He would go, he was also asked very, very, with a lot of insistence, to keep everything quiet. So he wasn't supposed to tell whether it's my mom, let alone us, because it was very, very hush-hush and keep it a secret. First things, that's where we get into the weird or abnormal parts. So he was not supposed to talk to this, even including to his wife. He's not supposed, nobody's supposed to know. Second, he's supposed to act as if everything is normal. So wake up every morning. He would then take the train, the high-speed train to Lille in France, neighboring country to Belgium. And every day he would go and take the 6 o'clock train, and every evening he would come back on time for dinner, as he would have done if he had gone to work. So this is how this started. Initially, we didn't notice, at least myself, I didn't notice anything. Being a child, I wasn't the confidant of my dad, obviously. We had only been living together for 3 years. I was in my late teens. So I wasn't going to pick up on these things, but my mom would. And actually, as the days went by, and the let's say the tone of the conversations went by, actually got into a situation where he was forced to, he chose to open up to us. So the pressure for Dad to sign on declarations got high. Once these talks were started, once everything was going smoothly, they were seeing him every day, the intentions got clearer and clearer. It was clearly asked for my dad to establish the existence of Akazu. So my dad was there to demolish Zigiranyirazo. That was his primary task.
Let's call another timeout so the audience knows what you're talking about. When you refer to Akazu, you're referring to the clique in power. So this is like language that's used in Rwanda. But when we refer to Akazu, this is basically the old clique that was the most powerful, basically, group of people in power in Rwanda before Kagame and the RPF took over Rwanda. So before 1994, or between the 70s, 80s, and a little bit of the 90s. That's who, and that's what your dad was supposed to be testifying to destroy, right? Or to.
Right. He was him being a former minister, him being from the north, him being a Hutu, him being all these things made him a credible witness to the Akazu existence and the dealings during the genocide. So he was a perfect, let's say, key witness for the ICTR to bring about and prove the existence of Akazu. So along the way, obviously, they needed him to affirm certain situations and certain facts that he had not been a witness to. And the longer they went on, so the weeks went on, this went on for months, this daily routine went on for months. But as the days went by, my dad realized that they wouldn't accept anything but him signing everything they already had pre-written to prove their case. So there was no question of looking for truth, it was a question of just signing on the papers. Wow. So once my dad would realize this, and would always also give his counter arguments because his whereabouts were known, his responsibilities were known, he was no longer in affairs by the time of the genocide. So he was perfectly clear actually to defend himself and say, okay, I can give all the inputs that I can give, looking for the truth. But as the weeks went by, it was obvious that he only had to sign the pre-written testimonies. So
time out, just to make sure that we understand this correctly, and Freeman, keep me honest here if this is how you're also understanding this. They basically, the ICTR wanted or pretended that they wanted the truth. That's what they told him first. His best friend, Michel Bagaragaza, said, come help us establish the truth. Then he gets there and they tell him, no, we want you to give this testimony. Basically, they created a testimony for him instead of him telling the truth. Instead of him saying what he knew, they basically told him, go to the court and say this right here. That's what you're telling us. Is that what you're understanding yourself, Freeman? Because that's this is a UN court.
Had with me. I also want to drop in another question. Up to this moment, your family and all your family members had no idea that your dad was talking to these people. Did you all know?
No, he kept it secret until he no longer could. But indeed, we weren't aware of this. This was very hush-hush, and this was very, very keep quiet. And indeed, Claude, your conclusion is right. The story was pre-written already. The elements that he had to prove were already established, and he just had to confirm them from the prosecutor's team. So we're talking about a team of investigators who were officially there, who had also because I just told you about the indictment that they showed him that they would issue against him. This was from the official ICTR prosecutor.
Okay, one more thing. Yeah. One more thing. So they used his best friend to convince him to talk to them. His best friend played the game. He agreed to play the game with them. Right. Then they told him, this is what we want you to say versus what he actually himself had to say. If you don't say it, number 4, we are going to indict you, even though it's been 11 years since this whole thing has happened. and like there's been no indictment, not a peep, nothing. But all of a sudden, if you don't say this, you're gonna be indicted also. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Claude. That's exactly what happened. And so the indictment was the ultimate, let's say, pressure that they had. Unfortunately, my dad was like, at some point, I'm ready to go and face the court. Let's just do it because this is not working out.
Wow.
But all throughout this process, you have to also imagine they were realizing that my dad wasn't going to cooperate like his best friend did. And so the pressure mounted up. I want to touch a little bit on the kind of proceedings that these official investigators from the ICTR were using on a daily basis against my dad. So, and again, keep in mind, this lasted for months. We're not talking about a one-day thing, we're talking about months. Every single time that my dad would end up not signing at the end of the day, not signing whatever declaration that they wanted, he would get insulted. He was an imbecile. He was stupid. He was all of these abuses that you can imagine, coming from two ICTR investigators that were telling him to actually give in into these lies and all of that on a daily basis. If it weren't insults, it were also physical torture. Like my dad had a condition. He had a heart condition, which required from him to follow a very, very strict diet. Otherwise, his tension, his blood pressure would skyrocket and he would not be able to function. So he needed to eat at certain time, in certain quantities, etc. One of the things they would use against him was to withhold his food.
Seriously?
We're talking about the UN withholding food so that he first signs or gives into one declaration. Had I not heard it from my dad, I would also be in disbelief, but this happened.
We're talking about the United Nations set up court, not the Rwandese court, right?
No, the International Criminal Court that's who we are talking about.
I just wanted to make sure that it's clear because oftentimes we think that it's just Africans who are as corrupt, but they also
these guys
get it from
were
somewhere.
Canadian, Belgian, and I think I cannot recall the nationality of the prosecutor who's African, but this is an international team.
Do you have the names?
Sanctioned. We do.
Do you have the names of the agents and the investigators who were involved?
The ones that my dad would see on a daily basis, I can never forget their names. Tremblay-Réjean, André Delvaux. These were the guys that were doing this on a daily basis to my dad. These are the guys that were slapping him whenever he wasn't responding quick enough. These are the guys that told him what would happen to him. But I think we would get there later on in that, because after my dad realized all of this, obviously, he had a little bit of education. He had his own background. He had strong values in which he believed. He just decided that he was ready to face whatever consequence that there would be of his indictment, rather than continuing in these very shady type of processes that you wouldn't believe that would be from an official institution such as this one. So at a point, he did two things. He wrote a letter where he signified his will. But once we talk about his disappearance, I'll let you know the importance of that letter. Second, he told these investigators that he was stopping his collaboration with them. He was ready to face the consequences and just decided after, I think it was beginning of November, that he was done. Once he'd done that, that's where we get back to how these things work. Guess who jumped back in? That's Mr. BFF. The best friend was back in the ride. His task was to convince my dad to not let go because he had to trust the process, given that he himself was also engaged in this. So he's there again, vouching, telling him, do not do that. There may be consequences for your family. You have to think about your kids, your wife, and all of those. So he was very persuasive, but at this point, my dad was not.
He was using emotional blackmail, right? basically, you know, trying to blackmail him about the family and the kids, and, you know, basically saying, do wrong for the sake of your family. And a lot of people do this. They're like, no, do wrong for the sake of your family. And
What kind of
no, you
bestie
can't
is
live with.
that? Seriously, they must have had so much on him. Like, really, sounds like a Hollywood script.
So at some point, I do want to talk about, because I followed the case of Michel Magaragaza at some point, but I want you to continue with your testimony, and
Yeah.
you know, just how foul the ICTR was in this whole thing, because I read the documents, the court documents. So we'll get to that. You're right, they had a lot on him.
They
It's
did.
sad.
So unfortunately, towards the end of November, I told you my dad decided he was gonna stop going there daily to Lille, to France, on a daily basis. And at some point, they told him the consequences. And I guess, to him being a father, the consequences he was promised were grave enough for him to open up. By this time, he had already spoken to my mom, because obviously you have to imagine that at this point, you see also the physical traces of months and months of daily torture, of whether it's physical or mental torture. So he had loosened weight. We could see that he wasn't fine. He would come home. I think his happiest day would be on the Friday evening when he would come home. But you could see that he would be boosted. And then towards Sunday, which was prayer day, and then in the afternoon, he would probably go see his best friends and have a drink. And then towards the evening, you would see him go down again. So this was something that we were witnessing, but then he decided that it was grave enough for him to give us an explanation.
So wait, let me ask you, Natasha. So when he would go hang out with his besties, was it the same best friend who was continuously?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about his friends here in Brussels that
Gotcha.
that he would just go to relax with, and the ones that he had close to him to change his mind from what was waiting for him on the Monday morning.
Got it.
So fast forward to end of November, where he told them on the Friday before he disappeared on the 21st of November. It was on a Monday. On the Friday before that, he told the investigators that he wasn't coming back on the Monday. He was very clear, very adamant that he was done. He actually told them, let's just meet up in Arusha. It's going to be easier to deal with the accusations from there.
And Arusha is the location of the ICTR, for those who are following.
Right. And so on the Saturday, after having taken this decision, on the Saturday, he set us all as a family and came clean on what had been going on for months. Here's where he told us about having had this internal conversation with himself and deciding to stop going there on a daily basis, basically telling us what he had been going through. First, you have to imagine yourself as a kid, imagining your dad in that kind of situation, seeing him tell you that, yeah, you've seen me tired, but it was due to this. Now you start to piece things together. At that time, I'm 19, and I'm just discovering the world. I'm starting to my university, so I'm like, but this is not possible. So I'm in disbelief. I don't understand how it's possible, but also I'm very human. I'm like, hey, so they told you, because one of the things that decided him to stop was they told him if he didn't sign, the indictment wasn't what was going to happen to him, and only they told him that he would be killed, that his body would be found in the streets, that the dogs would pee on his body, and that basically he would leave us, his whole family, with nothing, that he would basically die that kind of death.
Just a minute, Natasha. So the ultimatum was either sign or death. And not only death like a dog, where you just would be found like a little street piece of meat on the street somewhere. And this is, we're talking about the United Nations agents, representatives.
Literally.
And by the way, the threat to take him to court, they gave up on it because they figured, you know, they didn't want the truth. So they threatened him with going to court, and he said, okay, I'll take it. And instead of taking him to court, they said they would kill him and kill him like a dog.
They promised him that kind of death. And he was like, hey, I know that's what I've been told, but I'm ready to go for it because I will not compromise the truth. He literally said, I will not compromise my truth just to please you, just so that you can prove some theory. So the people that would like can later on read, because he wrote this, he put this in writing. Otherwise, I think we would be telling another story. He put this in writing.
Yeah.
And so when he was telling this to us, again, I'm listening through my ears of a 19-year-old who's just discovering these kind of things and just going like, wow, okay, so these are the consequences, but then, okay, what are they promising? So that's where I was very human. I'm not proud of that. I was like, hey, but if they're gonna kill you, why don't you just sign? As in, what's preventing you to just, sign those papers? And yeah, maybe we'll get relocated. We'll go live, I guess, in the US, because that's what was promised. And that's actually what happened to the family of Bagaragazad. It was resettlement, financial stability. We would never have to deal with any kind of, we wouldn't have to work anymore because he had then secured his family's future. But then on the other hand, he had to sign. And then I was like, but Dad, why don't we just, let's just go. I mean, you're suffering clearly enough. You've given yourself for your country for long enough. So why go through that? That's where my dad told me, he looked at me straight in the eyes and said, my daughter, you can never, ever compromise the truth and your principles. If you do, there is no stopping. And so I cannot do that to you. Although you're looking at it from your eyes and you're seeing, I don't have to work anymore and you'll still be alive and this and that. But how alive will you be? What kind of life will you be having? I didn't understand at the moment because obviously, so also I wasn't the only person asking questions. So but this was a tough conversation, but I could tell that although it was difficult, my dad was relieved. So it was at least sharing this burden. He wasn't carrying it alone anymore. So we had that. It was a Saturday before he disappeared. And then, like I told you, on the Sunday prayer day, he went on his business. And then particular incident here that happened, that's actually where that's where it went down. So we're talking on the Sunday evening, late afternoon. Normally, he, like I told you, he would have been with probably one of his best friends where he would usually go and they would have a beer. Then he would come home. We would expect him around 8-ish, because this was his day. Then that day he didn't come home. I was like, my mom started getting worried because at this point I'm home with my mom. We're not seeing him come home. My mom was like, okay, let me call him up. Then when she did, he told her that he didn't have the strength to get home by himself. He told her where he was, and he was basically seated on a bench. This bench was, let's say 10 to 15 minutes walk to home. But he was so weak and not okay that he couldn't make it by himself on his own feet. So he called mom and said, okay, if you can, please come and get me because I cannot make it. This is something that he would have done with no effort whatsoever in another setting. But so here I go. I think it was by then it's late, it's dark. I think it's maybe 11-ish. And here I go with my mom to go get my dad. We found him where he was seated, like he had told us, that he was extremely, extremely weak. And I could see, obviously not okay. We had to help him by the shoulders to get home. We had several moments where he couldn't make it anymore. So we had to stop, catch a breath, and then continue. He was really in a bad shape. He was, you could see it's difficult as a daughter when you look up to your dad and to see him in that kind of physical weakness, where you see that he was physically hurt. he was vomiting blood. And this is, I think it's one of those details that is a bit morbid, but this is the last stroll we took together, and I could remember every single spot where he had vomited. So I knew where his blood was. Keep in mind, we are the Sunday, he would go missing the next Monday morning, and this was our last stroll. And the days after, in some morbid way, to trying to reconnect, I would actually walk back this path and just passing by there and saying, okay, this is my dad, this is my dad's blood. It was something more than not knowing. It was some weird reconnection, some just, knowing that, okay, we had been here together, and yeah, he's missing, but he's out there somewhere. So yeah, this happens on the Sunday night. We go home, go to sleep. And then on the Monday morning, when we woke up, I woke up like every other day, went to school, came home to find that my dad didn't come home, and to find my mom worried sick because she had no news. So on the 21st of November, that's where my dad went missing. And that's where we start the second, let's say, part of this horrible journey, the disappearance, because that's also something else.
So I remember when the disappearance happened, how I actually found out about it, I got an email from your brother. It was on a Wednesday on November 23rd, 2005. And it said, hey, bro, we got a situation here. Dad is missing since Monday. I'll call you when I can. Call me when you can. Peace. I knew he was worried. Just the title of the email, when I read the title of the email, I was like, there must be something wrong. And I remember starting to, at the time, there was, barely any social media. There was some, but not like today where you can, put out alerts and things like that. I remember starting to put out some alerts and people saying, hey, be quiet. Like, why are you talking? Like, stay out of this thing. And I just remember being like, what would you do? Like, somebody's missing their family member, and it's still happening now. Like, people go missing every day, not only in Rwanda, but around the world, kidnapped by the government of Rwanda or these international institutions. And people want you to stay silent. And it's like, no, if you stay silent, then you're enabling whoever's doing it to continue doing it. So I just wanted to stop you for a second so you can take a breath. And I know it was heavy and talking about, I know it was your dad, the last walk with him, and your mom and everything. But I just remember when that story happened, like it was yesterday, because it was it was heavy.
Crazy. It's vivid, right? It still feels like yesterday. And indeed, the minute, so my dad woke up on the Monday morning, and my mom heard him actually busy in the kitchen because she used to set up his meal. Like we said, like I told you, he had a very strict diet he had to follow. So when we woke up, by the time she heard him from afar, by the time she got up, he was already gone. Remember, he used to take the 6 o'clock train, but he had left the fridge open. But she then saw immediately that the what she had prepared for him for his meal was gone. So she was like, okay. So he went back to see the investigators like he used to. Probably they need to finalize the conclusion of their talks. And so, but he didn't come home in the evening. He didn't come home in the evening. And actually, even the investigators called my mom and was like, have you seen my dad? And here's where the story is now twisted, because he's supposed to be with them. They're calling mom to ask her about his whereabouts. Here she starts to get worried.
Did your mom know the investigators? Like, how did she know it was them?
My mom knew their names. So obviously by now, my dad had confided in us, but even before that, he had confided in his wife, with his wife. So my mom knew about she had never met them, but she knew about them. So when they called her, she knew exactly what it was about. So she was like, hey, but so where is he? Because I know that he had to see you and that you had an appointment today. But they were like, yeah, we did. And it was at this time and he never showed up. So we are a bit worried. Keep in mind, he is working with us. So let's meet up tomorrow. So we are on a Monday. My mom is worried sick. She's expecting news from them. These guys are telling him he didn't show up. So she just decided to go to the police and say, okay, my husband is missing and the circumstances are worrisome.
What time,
Obviously,
approximately, what time did they actually check in with your mom?
they checked in with my mom on the same day that he disappeared, so on the 21st of November. And then on the evening, my mom went to the police to just say, okay, still don't know about his whereabouts. And then they asked my mom to meet them the next day on the Tuesday in person. And so when they met at this meeting, it happened at Gare du Midi. For those of you who know Brussels, it's one of the big train stations. And they basically wanted to know what my mom knew. So if you are in this situation, you as a wife, you're just worried to know, okay, so you had an appointment. What happened? How can we retrace his steps? When last did you hear from him?
Yeah.
All their questions were, so what do you know about us? What did he tell you about us? Did you know that we were talking? Did you know that he was coming?
Wait, this was the first conversation that she had with them?
With them, in person.
So she had never spoken to them, and they're asking her all these questions?
Except for on the phone, the day before when they actually called and asked my mom if she knew. This was all also facilitated again by the same person.
The
best friend, huh?
The BFF, because at this point,
okay.
He is the one that is saying he's also worried with mom. He's telling her, yeah, you have to speak with them because we need to look for your husband. And that's where also we start getting into pushing the agendas, because my mom was just worried about her husband. Where is he? What happened? These investigators were worried about what does she know? What does she know about our dealings? Then we have Vagaragaza that was actually the enabler, getting instructions, and I had to convince my mom to stay quiet, because obviously she had to also tread carefully, because what they were telling her, my mom, was that since my dad had agreed to charge this high-profile sir, Mr. Zigiranyirazo, that his life was in danger de facto, given the presence of the Hutu community, that he was a high-ranking member of the Akazu, that they really had
Natasha,
enemies.
If I can stop you for a second also, again, to give context, Zigiranyirazo, Mr. Z, who you are seeing on the screen, he's known as Mr. Z. He was the brother-in-law to the president, the assassinated Rwandan president, Juvenal Habyarimana, who was assassinated, and the assassination was the very first act and the kickoff of the genocide in 1994. And so, go ahead with the story. I just wanted to give the context on who Mr. Z was and why it was important. They wanted your dad to take him down.
Exactly. So he's the guy that my dad had to take down. But him being also a powerful man, the theory that they were pushing to my mom was that him and his network were out to harm my dad, that they probably had taken him and had him. And if my mom would make too much noise, or if we would go protesting to journalism, etc., that we actually may push them to killing my dad. So what does this do? This does that you trust me.
I'm just confused. How in the world that the United Nations knew that Z and his team were gunning for your dad? For them to be so sure that they would have actually harmed him or harming your whole entire family.
And actually, another question I have is, if they knew How could they not protect him as a key witness in this high-profile trial? It's the basics. You're telling me that the risks are so high that in Brussels in 2005, a group of Hutu former dignitaries are going to organize an assassination on a person who's going to be a key witness against them. You, being the institution who's taking the witness testimony,
zero action.
Nothing. You have no idea about his whereabouts. You're just saying, "Oh, I'm worried," but you're not. You're not supposed to be worried only. You're supposed to also have the conditions in which whoever is going to do engage in testifying against
especially if they
dangerous
knew
people,
all along that there were some security concerns. That
exactly.
should have been the first thing that would have been taken as an action.
They should have secured him as a key witness to their trial. But then they're just telling my mom, "Be careful because these guys are dangerous." And then you're like, okay, if you cannot secure my dad against these guys, what can we do?
That's right.
As regular citizens, what can we do? So now my mom is getting worried, but they did advise her to go through and go to the police as well and confirm the missing person case, because obviously you report it and then they ask you to wait for, I think it's 24 hours, and then you have to come back and confirm the case, which she did. They actually also encouraged her to do so. What the best friend did, however, is, okay, you got the email from my brother on the Wednesday. Basically, here we are seeing nothing progressing, so we're starting to, okay, look for things that we could do. And at a point, we are organizing and thinking about going to the press. What Claude said was exactly what happened. My mom will be like, let's just go to the press, because somebody has to know. If anybody has information, how can they know that this person is missing so that they share it if you're not going to sound the alarm? So it's a very, let's say, natural thing to do if you want people to jump in and help you. We were feeling totally helpless. The people that we thought were entrusted with his safety were telling us, "Hey, we have no idea where he is." So you're left to yourself. So you're helpless. Your only thing is to ask for help. And you can only do that by speaking up, and that's through today it's social media as well, but you also have journalists that are doing a great work, platforms that would carry your voice further than you can carry it yourself. But the advice was, no, keep quiet, because if you do go to the press, you might again accelerate his killing and his assassination. It's not logical.
No.
Coming from somebody that you trust, though, you may consider it. And this is the trap that they do. But my mom, thank God, she didn't follow through, because it didn't make sense. But
so the whole story is about keeping things hidden. When you see red flags, you hide the red flags or you ignore them, because they told your dad, don't talk to anybody about it. Yeah. They actually made him, they tortured him and said, don't tell anybody about it. Don't tell your family, don't tell anybody, you'll die, or whatever, you'll die, or something else, something horrible is going to happen to your family. Mm-hmm. So they wanted total silence. Like all these crimes, I think this is like a lesson to everybody. Like if anybody has any doubt, silence is the worst thing that you can do when somebody is suffering. When something is going wrong, being silent is the worst thing that you can do, other than really just being one of the people who are actually doing the act. You are enabling, you are helping whoever's doing it when you remain silent. So whatever convenience you have, whatever fears you have and everything, just know that silence is the wrong thing to do. And this is what they wanted. They wanted secrecy. They wanted to hide it, to put it in the dark. They wanted for people to talk about it in like in the back versus like putting it out in the open. And I'm glad that, that not only you didn't follow that advice, your mom didn't follow that advice, but that also your dad wrote the letter that he wrote. And we actually have the letter. Maybe this is a good time to, Freeman, if you have it pulled up, for the audience to actually hear the words of the person that we're talking about who was assassinated. Do we have that letter, Freeman?
I did. Let me pull that up again on our screen. It's just insane. Yes, I do have the letter. Let me read it right quick. So the letter says here, Mr. Prosecutor, I have been interviewed several times by your representatives from the ICTR, Richard Renault, Director of Investigation, Stephen Rapp, Chief of Legal Proceedings, Regine Tremblay, and André Dalvaux, investigators. Even you yourself met with me on the 5th of October 2005. I was asked from the beginning if I was willing to make a contribution to bringing out the truth about the Rwandan drama. I responded positively and enthusiastically. But later, when it became a question of getting to the heart of the matter, Mr. Tremblay first read me the indictment you had written up against me. I'll spare you the details that led up to your making your demand. I must help you destroy the exact terms used by the investigators, Mr. Zigiranyirazo Porte, and all the members of the Akazu, including his sister Agath, and destroy the leadership of MRND, among whom Ngirumhatse Matthew, Karemera Edouard, and Nzirorera Joseph had already been given up to your office by Mr. Bagaragaza Michel, a man about whose good qualities and honesty your investigators could not stop bragging. I do not want to lie to please these investigators and to give credit to your theses, according to which the Rwandan genocide was planned exclusively by the MRND and the Akazu. I am ready to face all the consequences that were described to me by investigators Tremblay and Dalvaux, that I will be lynched, crushed, my corpse will be trampled in the streets, and dogs will piss on it. These are the investigators' own terms. Mr. Prosecutor, those who planned and carried out the genocide of the Rwandan people, beginning the 1st of October 1990, are well known. Those who assassinated President Habyarimana Juvenal and unleashed the horror on Rwanda are also well known and are the same ones who planned and executed the genocide of the people in the Congo. Signed, J.U.
So thank you, Freeman, for reading the letter. That's the letter that I think blew the cover off of all of the secrecy and the lies and the alibi and everything that the prosecutor's office, the investigators, who I'm pretty sure those names are fake. That would be my big guess. That's standard. They use that way, but I'm sure we'll eventually identify who they are. But the letter really unveiled the cover, not only off of them, but off of his best friend. And I just want to commend you that for making sure that it's documented. Again, another lesson learned. Don't be silent. Don't be complicit. Do not let the red flags go unchecked or pretend they don't exist. And speak up. Speak up, but tell your own story. So Natasha, I really commend you for coming forward and telling your own story. Absolutely. Because now you take it away from the perpetrators and you own your story. And now you're creating witnesses. The thousands of people who are watching this are now witnesses, and they can share your story to the rest of the world, because as we say here on HMG, the world must know.
The world will know.
And make sure they know your story the way you want it to be told.
That's right.
Because that's the biggest lesson I learned from my dad. Because keep in mind, we're talking about hush hush, everything in the dark, everything in the silence. So nobody's supposed to know what happened. And yet what happened after he had been missing, the letter, the manner in which it came out, is the lesson that I take away, because this letter was given to a few people he trusted, to bring out, if in the event of anything happening to him that would, yeah, if anything happens, just bring out this letter. And that's exactly what happened. After he had gone missing for a few days, the people he had trusted this letter with produced it and brought it out. This came in direct confrontation with whatever insinuations and, you know, things that they were telling my mom to watch out for. So the narrative of the ICTR investigators at this point towards my mom is the Hutu extremists are out to kill him. They probably have him already, because he's signed his confessions and he's charged them so bad that they will definitely kill him if we don't find him quickly.
The other lesson learned here, Natasha, the other lesson learned is have a plan. Don't let the killers have a plan with you not having one. You should always be a step ahead of them, like he did, and had the letter written and documented his own story.
Exactly. Organize yourself, because we know they go to this extent. Personally, I didn't expect this from an institution such as the ICTR, but had we been talking about the Rwandan justice system, obviously, but I didn't expect it from the UN. But still, it doesn't take away the key takeaway that you should organize. The narrative being pushed was he confessed, he charged his fellow members of the Akazu, because of course he had to be one to witness what was being done there.
Right.
And so he confessed, he charged them. So don't get close to them, because you may get also the consequence of that. The truth is, he had already refused to do whatever they asked of him. If this letter had not been authenticated, because of course they fought it, they had already these pre-signed declarations that I told you before, they were going to run with it still. Him being missing was just going to be covered by the fact of their, I don't know, credibility as investigators, the prosecutor's office, but that were assuring us that he had done this, that he was ready for it, and that there was no doubt about his confessions. Then this letter comes out. It had to be authenticated because they fought the letter and its authenticity. They didn't believe in it. They were like, this is contrary to everything we've been doing with your dad. Or in this case, they were telling my mom, so it was about her husband. So if he had not written it, signed with his own name, it had to be authenticated also through various experts.
I was actually going to ask that question. Did they authenticate, did he actually write the letter?
Yeah, they had to, because obviously the defense team of Mr. Zigiranyirazo produced this letter against their charges. So it had to be authenticated as to being a real, accurate, written and signed by my dad in order to be accepted as not being real, as his confessions produced by the prosecutor's office not being real. So at this point, we know that my dad had the final word. If he had not done this, somebody else would have told his story about his last days, about his morals and principles, and we wouldn't have anything to go off on except for that, except for his word, except for us knowing him, knowing that he would never do such a thing. He did give us something extra to use, and to be confident enough to speak up and say, no, he didn't do that. This is not something that he would have done. It's against everything he believes in. And now we have the proof of that. So tell your story, because otherwise somebody else will tell it for you, and it might not be whatever you think you want. That's what they were going to do. So don't just, what I remember and what I retain here is the importance of doing that, because I don't know what would have been the trial of Mr. Zigiranyirazo. But then also we come to realizing that this is all about a trial of somebody else that I personally didn't place in my life, in my daily life. It hit hard. It hit me hard. I had to step back and try to understand, how does this work? What's these institutions? My 19-year-old brain didn't get it. So I had to take a step back and learn, educate myself, do some research, because otherwise I couldn't read this situation.
Yeah. So if we can go back to what happened after he disappeared, and they said be silent, and
Yeah.
you said no, we're not gonna die in silence. We're gonna what happened in the community. And you know, like I said, I give my little testimony how I started making noise, and people were like, "What are you doing?" And it's like,
Right.
no, you know.
But you didn't stop, and you didn't stop, and that's we also pushed hard. We would do, yeah, we would do articles in whatever media that were ready to share the story so that we would get some info. The police was very helpful, so we continued collaborating with the Belgian police, who actually grasped the severity of the case. I have to say, they grasped it rather quickly. And also, we started organizing ourselves, and I believe it was every Wednesday that we would hold a protest. We would be out there in the streets just asking for answers because none of these things made sense. None of it made sense. So, oh, at this point, they weren't accessible to us. At this point, these guys weren't accessible to us. However, the Belgian police, in their proceedings, did hear them. So this, again, I just touched on the severity of the case to the Belgian police. This is the very first time that the immunity of the ICTR investigators was lifted, because they were actually interrogated in regards to the involvement, to their involvement in the disappearance and death of my dad. Because at this point he's just missing. We don't know yet about his whereabouts, but they were heard once the investigation started on his assassination. This was a unique thing to do because they have immunity to doing all these things that they're doing. Nobody's supposed to interrogate them about. But once we get to that point as well, I'll tell you a little bit about it, because there was also a reason why they were doing these proceedings in Lille, France, and not Belgium. But we'll touch on that international, let's say, layer later on. But in terms of the disappearance of my dad, from the 21st of November 2005 until the 17th of December 2005, we had no idea. On a regular basis, we would go protest, we would go and whatever. I actually used to call my dad up just saying, okay, who knows, maybe this time he'll pick up. Who knows, maybe somebody's gonna do something, maybe somebody knows something. So this was it for this month, almost a month. It went on a daily basis. I have to say one thing though, the community organized around us quickly. So when we were doing these things, we weren't doing it alone. A lot of people felt also the responsibility and the urge to do something. So we received a lot of support from very, very various profiles and people who just felt like there was a grave injustice going on and that something had to be cleared. And let me maybe fast forward to the 17th of December. I was at school. Keep in mind, this is my first year at the university. I want to do good. So despite this totally disruptive event that just happened, I kept my dad's mindset and I was like, okay, still I need to study so I can understand life. So let me just keep going to school. And it was also my safe haven. Nobody knew about my story. I had no time to get anyone involved personally that I would had already entrusted with my story of what was going on. So I would go to school very happy to just go and be a regular kid. That was my go-to place, just to have some kind of normality, because once we were home, it was organizing, protests, what's the police latest report, who said this, who's done what can we do. So this was another kind of life starting once you've reached home. But then I would go to school and have some breathing space.
So you mean to tell us, during your first year at the university, you had to split between demonstration, classwork, being a daughter, and being a consoler to the family, all in one. And you didn't go nuts for quite a bit.
Oh, I think I probably did go off several occasions, but thank God, I don't know, our family, we stayed together and we went through that. We survived that ordeal, but it was not, it wasn't, it wasn't smooth. It
I
was
can
with a
only
lot of
imagine.
hiccups and falling and standing up again and falling again. Because, for instance, I remember the 17th of December when my dad's body was found, exactly like it was described to him. I mean, he was found in the Canal of Brussels. For those who know the Belgium, his body was found in the canal, badly decomposed. Several parts were missing. There were obvious signs, according to the initial reports, there were obvious signs of violence, violence, that's how they called it. I don't know the exact term. And he had spent, basically DNA had to be used to formally
Identify.
Basically, signs of
identify.
physical trauma and torture.
Right.
Physical
So there
torture.
were indication that there were some, I think they call it ill intention, or I don't know how they call it, but there were traces of intervention of a third party that didn't look like a normal death. This is an accident. So there were reasons to start an investigation to a suspicious death. I had the news. I was at school. I was basically following a course, normal course, and then in the back of the aula, I saw the auditorium. I saw a good friend of our family, Doris. She was there with my friend at the time, my boyfriend at the time. Just seeing her face, Doris, I knew exactly the deal. Because there was no reason she would be there. There was no placing her face in that setting else than there being horrible news about my dad. I didn't say much. I just I took my stuff and stood up, went into the car. They drove me home, all the way home. I was screaming. I was angry. I was out of control. You asked me how I dealt with it. I didn't deal with it. I was overwhelmed. And then I remember reaching home, getting to my uncle, Nyaneza, who was there, because he had to go with my mom and identify the body. Despite what I just told you, the body looked like, but he was there. He's the one I saw when I came home. The minute
I think we have a memory, Natasha, of take your time, while you take care of yourself. We have a picture of the uncle sharing a moment with your dad, Uncle Nyanez. I believe the studio has it. So we did a little bit of digging here. Hang in there. And while you do that, wanted to share with everybody that these conversations to have them, because the truth in the world, the truth must be spread around the world. And we're grateful that y'all are following. And next Saturday, just as we give Natasha a little break, wanted to let you all know at the same time, 12 Eastern time, which is 9 a.m. Pacific time, and also 6 p.m. Paris, Brussels, Kigali, Johannesburg. We have another powerful conversation with the global African, those of us from the continent and those who were born and are descendants of enslaved Africans, are holding in a Pan-African solidarity event to continue to advocate for our sisters and brothers everywhere, all over the world. But there is a very specific case that we're going to talk about during that event, and it's going to be very powerful. And we hope that you will join us again for that conversation. And we hope that you continue to share these conversations. And we hope that you understand, as a witness to what Natasha went through, to what so many of us went through, to so many of the conversations that we bring forward, that you understand that it's important for the world to know. I just want to go back to some of the lessons that we've learned throughout this. Natasha will proceed in a second. Looks like you've gotten yourself back together. One is don't allow darkness to cover things that are happening because you're helping the perpetrators. Don't be silent when somebody is being tortured, harmed, or killed. Do not remain silent, and that is why HMG is here to spread and share, these type of stories. Look for the red flags. When you see red flags, do not ignore them, because either you are endangering somebody else or you're endangering yourself. That's or right. Many people. You can harm a whole community by ignoring red flags. Best friends, please stop setting people up. If you decide to do wrong, don't drag other people into it. So that also is difficult, because when your family member or your best friend is blackmailing you, also understand, don't fall for the blackmail, because you can't win. If you take the blackmail, you lose. If you refuse the blackmail, you may win. Give yourself a chance. Speak up. Do something, but don't just sit idle and do nothing. So again, reminder, next Saturday. Natasha, if you're ready to proceed, please, let's continue.
Yeah, thank you, Claude. Thank you for giving me a moment. I needed it. Yeah, I was basically about to say how when I saw my uncle, remember I told you about the anger? I directed it all to him, and he took it. He took every bit of it. I yelled at him. I was not respectful. I was so angry at this invisible community that my dad stood up for. Yeah. I said some things that when I hear myself today, I'm like, wow, those were pretty strong statements there, but I was broken. My uncle let me let it all out. I did. Basically, I vented towards him, and he then told me one simple phrase, because I was there, but so why didn't he say it? Why didn't he sign it? Did he have to die? I'm not for this. I don't even know these people. Who are these Rwandan people they're talking about? Who are they? Give me faces, give me names. I don't care. This is me going off on my uncle. And when I kept saying, why didn't he? He was like, that's not who your dad was. Papa, that's not who your dad was. Period. And then I calmed down, because that was it. He didn't sign it because that wasn't him. He didn't go through, even though he knew that he could die and get found in those circumstances. He didn't do it because that wasn't him. Yeah. But Garagaza did, but Uwiringiyimana Juvenal did not. That wasn't him. And that's all I needed at that point. And
yeah, we want to bring in the audience shortly, but before we do that, let's talk a little bit about what happened in the cases of Mr. Z. Did he end up being convicted? Do you know what happened? We know, but you may, maybe can share with the audience what happened with the case. And I also want to talk about the injustice that the additional injustice that the ICTR committed here, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda committed here in this case.
What happened to Mr. Zigiranyirazo's trial was that he was acquitted of all charges. When you look at this whole adventure afterwards, basically Mr. Zigiranyirazo was found innocent of all charges. This whole Akazu, the Akazu theory that had to be proven through this trial of Mr. Z, just basically fell in the water. At some point, it also seemed like it was some game between the defense team of Mr. Z and the prosecutor's office, where they were ping-ponging, hey, we got this, oh no, but you don't know what we have, So there was this thing that kind of felt like, hey, this is all happening above our heads, but somebody's dad, somebody's husband, in the meantime, just got killed. So the trial was won, obviously, by Mr. Zigiranyirazo. He's free today. He's acquitted of all charges. And I didn't hear about any other strong case on the Akazu, such as this one was going or promised to be. Fast forward to today when we see, but Mr. Bagaragaza also had his own confessions and trials to which he, because he also was signified a series of crimes and he accepted those. And I think Claude wanted to touch on that because at this point I kind of have a detachment to his case. But what we see today is obviously he was imprisoned for whatever charges he agreed to have committed. He was, like we say, promised resettlement for his family to the US. He himself was held in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken. And I think by now he's free. I think he's free, despite the charges that he confessed to have committed. So all in all, Mr. Zigiranyirazo is free. Mr. Bagaragaza, I think, is also free, but I could be wrong. Uwiringiyimana, my dad, is gone. And Arusha, the whole theory about Akazu was never proven, like Mr. Prosecutor Jallo wanted to do so with the case.
So just to be clear, Bestie set up his best friend, ended up dying. Best is completely has a full immunity, very well reallocated, set up for life. Your dad is dead. Your family is pretty much disintegrated. Your life trajectory just flipped, went elsewhere. And the ICTR, those representatives and the investigators, clean free. Nobody has any set of like consequences to their action. And here we are right now.
But they didn't know that HMG was going to come around and give a voice.
They did not know. They did not know.
I do want to. I want to add something about the bestie, Michel Bagaragaza. So I read the court documents, and for me, the injustice, even the bigger injustice, knowing the tragedy of your dad is the bigger tragedy in this whole thing, because he was charged, with crimes of genocide. And in his confession, it's the documents that I read, he said that he paid people who killed Tutsis, and he was involved in the killing of approximately 1,000 Tutsi people. 1,000 people, 1,000 people. Even one person is too many.
That's right.
And this person confessed to being involved in killing that many people. Whether he was given something to sign and agreed to sign that, or whether he did that, 1,000 people lost their lives. And the ICTR sentenced him to 8 years, and he only served 6, if I remember correctly. 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Less than my 2 hands. That's how many years this guy got for having been involved in the death of 1,000 people. Just let's take a moment.
Plus Bestie.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is crazy. And so that many people were killed. They didn't get justice. Your dad was killed, didn't get justice. The truth didn't get established, and the perpetrators got away, or they think they did, but it's not over yet.
It's not, and I hope it's not, because at some point there needs to be some type of accountability.
Absolutely.
And the Belgian police started the investigation because obviously at this point now we're talking about an assassination on Belgian soil. They started the investigation into this suspicious death. They heard, like I told you, the investigators, Tremblay-Régent, André Delvaux, have no idea if these are real names, but they are real people because they did meet with my mom. And my dad, and Bagaragaza, to the bare minimum, at least those, met with them physically. And when they started questioning them, obviously they pushed again the narrative of the Hutu extremists having probably dealt with my dad because he had confessed and this and that. Whatever wrongdoing that my mom talked about in what that she had witnessed, the torture, the mental harassment, all of these things, of course, they were dismissed because the Belgian police only had one shot. It's not like they could have them come in again and this and that, etc. And they actually had no access to more than what they were told. And eventually in 2012, I believe, they concluded to un non-lieu in French. They concluded, we don't have, there is nobody to prosecute. There is nothing more that we can do. To me, again, keep in mind, I'm reading this through my teenage years. I'm growing gradually. In the meantime, I also continued my studies and I kept on checking and trying to understand basically, because once I understood that these things were abnormal in my dad's case, I started wondering what else is abnormal. I'm sorry, it had to take for me to be touched that personally and that closely to open my eyes. Maybe something else would have done that, but that's what did it for me. And I started trying to understand first the history of my country, then the history of people around me, of the ICTR, and then started reading books and educating myself, obviously. And in doing so, I started asking questions and talking with other people. Remember, I told you we were demonstrating on a weekly basis. We were talking with a lot of people. I actually met a lot of people my age that were going through the same, let's say, kind of journey of questioning and trying to understand because we are basically inheriting this heavy story that is not a clean story. It's not only white. There is also these dark places like my dad just went through, and yet I didn't have all the answers. So when I was reading books and advising each other on what to read, eventually we formed a group of us, and I ended up, in 2008, we ended up structuring it into Jambo ASBL. So we've been advocating and first trying to understand our past so that we can prepare for our future. And we believe in one thing: we are the masters of our destiny. In order to do that, you have to understand your past. You cannot just pretend going forward without knowing what happened. So in this course of understanding and learning, that's why you find out this whole level of injustice that is upon us as Rwandans. And obviously you start speaking out. So we started speaking out, at least. We started setting our footsteps in those who did that before us, in asking questions through the Jambo News platforms. We would have conversations between people that would have different opinions on the subject, etc. We started also looking at people that had been victims of mass atrocities and genocide in our country. So we started, proposing some sort of I don't know, process for the people who were hurt in whichever means that we had. So we grow every day by looking at examples all over. We keep learning, but we just saw the importance of working with the victims, of understanding our history and putting ourselves also to work. And then that's where I saw the other layer of these mechanisms that are there to silence you. Claude talked about doing things in the dark, making sure that nothing comes out in the light, because obviously evil doesn't like the light, right? But then there's also trying to silence you as a person. So every single thing that I would do from my activism in Jambo ASBL, I will be reminded of my history. It first began as saying, hey, but aren't you the daughter of Uwiringiyimana? And isn't Uwiringiyimana the guy that got killed because he was going to testify against Mrs. Zigiranyirazo? Let me subtitle that for those who don't know about the context. Hey, you are speaking out on crimes perhaps against the Hutu community, but isn't your dad a traitor? That's just to summarize and really make a long story short. That's what was the narrative pushed. Then it went on to, oh, but you're a daughter of a genocidaire. Keep in mind, we talked about the history of my dad. There was no indictment until they wanted him to convict Mr. Zigiranyirazo. There was nothing official. There was no trial. there was nothing before the court of law. Even the false confessions that they were debunked by my dad's letter. Now we're going to affirmations. And now my dad is a genocidaire that had a confession there. And so how can you speak up as a daughter of a genocidaire? And that's where we go into this whole silencing of whoever is speaking up. It did not matter what I was saying. It did not matter who I was. It mattered that I was speaking up. The fact that I was speaking up is what made me a target of these accusations. Basically, I wasn't a victim. I couldn't even remember my dad on the 21st of November without some troll on Twitter coming to say, hey, but wasn't he a genocidaire? So basically, I'm no longer a victim. I'm no longer entitled to my grief just because I'm speaking out on injustices in Rwanda. And
Natasha, if it helps you, the two of us sitting here have been deemed fake survivors, like there is some type of fake genocide, because we refuse to be silent when we see injustices being committed. So, to me, the way I see it now, when they come up with those names and those accusations, it just shows that you are doing something that is actually constructive, because these are the perpetrators who are talking about it and they are trying to transfer the responsibility. So, here we are. You'll get called all kinds of names. We get called all kinds of names. But hey, if they can call me names and stop killing people, I welcome that all day, every day. Please do that. Please curse me out. Curse Freeman out. Curse Natasha out. And I hope there's other volunteers. Yeah, we are not scared of those who curse us out. We just speak up against those who kill people. That's the big concern. If you want to curse, bring it.
Natasha, I am so sorry. I am truly sorry for what has happened to your family, what has happened to you. But now there is one thing that I just can't help just put my head around. Your mom. She was not just your mom, she was your dad's wife, his love. What was give us a sense of mom's reaction? I know you just got a chance to go off to your uncle. How did mom deal with such a tragic news, and knowingly all that she has been privy to?
And your siblings, if you can, the family.
Actually, I wanted to touch a little bit on that as well, because for us, the kids, it was obviously extremely hard, but it can never be as hard as it was for my mom as a wife. Seeing her husband. I actually have a message that she wanted, because I asked her when I was preparing for this, and what she wanted to say, and I have a message that I would like to share, and that may give you the state of mind in which she was during this whole time. I've put it in English so that the audience can follow. Here's what she says. I look back on the last weekend spent with us. He had just declared to his executioners that he renounced their so-called collaboration. He was visibly suffering. He tried to talk to us, but did we listen to him? Especially me. And then he disappeared. And how? What did they do with him during that time from the 21st of November until 17th of December? When did he take his last breath? What kind of torture was he subjected to? What did he think? What did he think of us? What did he think of me? A real way of the cross, a long agony, and all of this for what? Who is responsible? Men use their power to arrogate themselves the right of life or death over their fellow men. Human justice is more often used to punish the weakest, and the feeling of powerlessness is the worst of torture. To then fall back on regrets that only worsen a situation that is already the worst case scenario. And forgiveness, yes, but forgiving is not forgetting. Who is responsible? That's my mom's message.
Thank you, Mom, for sending that message. I think it's an important message, and especially those last words: forgiving is not forgetting, and accountability must be, in order for really for things to be settled, there has to be accountability, and that is, again, they mistook, this whole setup. They didn't realize that things like HMG will pop up and blow the cover even further, and this story cannot end here. But we also want to bring in the audience. We have shared the Zoom link where we're going to allow maybe a couple people to ask questions randomly if broadcasting time allows. However, our co-host Clément Mbabazi actually has a lot of what the audience has shared with you, the comments and questions. If the studio can bring him on, so he can handle the Q&A. Clément, can you hear us? Are you?
Yes, Claude, can you hear me?
Yes. Please proceed with the audience interaction, and thank you for managing, everything that's been going on. It looks like a heavy downpour in the comments.
Thank you very much. First of all, I greet each and every one of you. Mostly Natasha, man, this is just I don't know. It's speechless. Mostly because I know her personally, and while she was telling the story, I remembered that time in Belgium, because it's a small country and a small city. I remember how horrified, how petrified all the Rwandese families were when it was, those protests and those, when we had that, a father, just a regular father, it could have been my father or his father or other father. It was just horrible. So we stand with her and her family for this horrible journey, but she stand tall. Her strength is just, unthinkable. I'm just, if I had a heart, maybe I would take it off. But for now, I'm just amazed. And Ramba. So while I will let Claude, translate that before I run out of English, I'm going.
Imhore, it's for those of you who can speak Kinyarwanda, it's such an intimate word that basically consoles you, like really intimately. Imhore,
Exactly. So that's
like a big hug.
Yeah.
With the sign, exactly. Yeah.
That's right.
Yes. So without further ado, let me go straight to the. One moment, please. I have all the comments written.
Can I check the Q&A?
Yeah. Yes. If you can send it back in here, because I think when I got promoted, the whole thing went to the other side. So.
Okay. So let's
the Q&A.
Yes, I put them in front of everybody. So if you can just copy and paste them here, I think I can see them. Or
yeah.
Are you able to access the Q&A yourself from there?
See if you can.
I don't see them, but I can wait. Yes. Now I can see. But many of them were just saying to Natasha, "Be strong," and just how amazed they were about what she's doing and how strong she is after all this. This is I'm looking for the word in English. Don't find it. In Kinyarwanda, it's inzira y'umusaraba. It's probably in English. Claude, help me.
A difficult walk for sure.
Yes,
exactly.
So the analogy of Jesus, the night was
path to the cross.
Exactly. So that was it. Yeah. So yes, many messages. We have Patrick here. When he's actually quoting Claude on this one. When you are a witness of something, you become responsible to share it. Signed Claude Gatebuke as We can know we have Yvonne Will. Let's all share and spread the word about the injustices and we witnessed it. We refuse to be silent, silent accomplices. Yes, that's Yvonne. We have Javan Wamungu, eager to hear your testimony. I believe this was another comment. Eager to hear your testimony. Leonard Wiringimana, I was a friend of my father. I still remember the Audi car he used to drive when I was a kid. Yeah, keep going on. Also, as I said, it stay strong, be strong. I mean, just sending love, people sending love. We have here You and I talk show. Queen Natasha, thank you for testifying, Amahoro, and the famous hashtag Imana, as she always does. We have Fiona Cassine. Thanks a lot, Natasha, for your deep testimony, for your dear father. Yes, and then the so-called UN is not about peace, and the ICTR is not about justice. This is the continuation of a war through other means disguised as peace. Keeping international and justice, question mark over there. And we have again Patrick asking if the prosecutor is his name is Boubacar Diarra, but I believe that's his name, right? In the case. Yes.
Yeah, the former prosecutor is Boubacar Diallo.
Yes, yes. So he was asking the question. I think now he has the answer.
Right.
Yes. Yes. So one.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah. So Natasha, I hope you understand how powerful your story is. By you telling the story, you know, you've woken a lot of people up. I did see a few that I would also like to acknowledge and recognize. Thank you, Clement, for sharing. We had some internationals that joined us. Sister Siku Page from Zimbabwe, Zimzima. Welcome to this conversation. Where she is saying that basically the perpetrators depend on our ignorance and fear, and that gives them armor. So your message is going far, you know, in terms of people really getting to know that we shouldn't be quiet and we should not keep things in the dark. There's also We Are Tiaguru, who is he was disappointed with some of the remarks that I made earlier about what's going on in Tigray, and I invited him. We do have in our future conversations, we have some conversations planned around what's going on in Ethiopia. So we invite you to reach out to us via the phone number that's provided on the name tags that you see on the screen, so that we can include you in the conversation. And Clement, if you have any more from the audience, we'll proceed with those. Otherwise, we may allow a couple of Q&As from those who joined the Zoom, and then proceed with Natasha and conclude.
Yes, I have found my file. So we have Kazuwa saying that this shows how United Nations is highly corrupted, and we should never expect anything positive from them. We have Kagoma Egle. The UN must be held responsible for the death of Mr. Wiringimana. Yes. And then we have Ali. Is there anything you can do to take a legal action against your dad's killers? I think, believe this is a question. So Natasha will acknowledge that and will respond to you or Ali. Yeah, so that was it, guys, for now. I tried to make it short because there are many interventions. And while I'm here, I thank each and every one of you for intervening on this and showing love for our queen sister Natasha, and for following the conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Clément. There is something that came from Maria Jikeze Sarungi. That is, I'm sure it's somebody from a country that is not Rwanda that's asking the question, do Rwandan people live in that much fear? And I think that's an important question for us to answer as we have this conversation. And Natasha will give you the honor of answering that question, and we can add our own thoughts to it.
Long story short, yes, this is the kind of climate we live in. And keep in mind, my father's case is a high-profile case, so that's why we know. The little we know, that's how we know it. We are talking about a high-profile case. We started this conversation with Paul Rusesabagina's kidnapping in Dubai, just as recent as August 2020. These things are still happening. So if our regime isn't afraid to kidnap the hero of Hotel Rwanda from Dubai, against all international laws and all international agreements, and do so confidently, then imagine what happens to the regular citizen on a daily basis in Rwanda. This hopelessness, this feeling of powerlessness is what we are here to actually stop and reduce. And speaking up is the way to go so. I would also like to maybe answer the question on what can be done. I would like to anybody, especially the people involved, especially the people from the ICTR, so people who are close to Boubacar Jallo's team, the team of Renault, the team of Stephen Rapp, whoever is close to these guys, if you know more, please come forward, because for the Belgian police, there was no evidence, not enough evidence to go, whether it's in the direction of the Hutu extremists, whether it's in the direction of whoever ill-doing that would be ordered by the Rwandan regime, or even at this point, I even sometimes wonder the ICTR themselves. There is no indication in whatever direction to look at. So this is a call for everybody who has some type of info. Please do so, because at this point we have nothing to continue and build up on. To know about my dad's demise and the truth about his assassination. Thank you.
So we have a couple of people who've joined to ask questions, and we only have a few minutes left for this broadcast. If we're not seeing your camera, we are going to demote you. But it looks like Ali Sempiga is wanting to ask a question. And Ali, go ahead and ask your question or make your comment, but make it quick. You have basically 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, Claude Gatebuke. Let me start by recognizing the hosts, HMG, and you, Claude Gatebuke, and maybe Clement, who helped you for the hosting of this great conversation. So I'm also starting by saying I'm so sorry, Natasha, for what you have endured during all these years. It's really heartbreaking, and I don't know what I can say, but I can say just keep on going. God is on your side. It's really heartbreaking, the story you've been telling us. So I would like to ask you only one question, and just it's concerning what can be done to, as if maybe to take a legal action, so you can maybe sue the prosecutors of the ICTR, or maybe do anything, just a legal action, so that maybe you can honor your parents, or you can pursue the justice in any way so that maybe justice can prevail for your parents? Thank you.
Thank you, Ali, for your question. I think at this point, we would need new elements. We would need new elements, new voices to come up so that we can actually see. I am still in doubt about the legality of all of this. The reason why my dad would take the train every day to France was because proceeding like that is illegal in Belgium. Proceeding like that in that manner, interrogating a person before there's any indictment, anything official, is illegal in Belgium. So it was still done. So my question here is, how is it legal in the UN? How can the ICTR be comfortable with dealing like this? And what can be done? That's something I'm still puzzled about. Obviously, the investigators, André Delvaux and Tremblay-Régent, that like ghosts, because it's really difficult to find input on their whereabouts, their thoughts, whatever. I think they're highly responsible for the torture of my dad, to the least. Now, what's their responsibility in his assassination? I really would like to understand. And I believe that the responsibility in bringing these answers to us as a family it lies on the people who had him. And this is the ICTR, and this is the UN. So I'm hoping that by having this conversation, by speaking up, that whoever is in charge and responsible can actually step up also, and we can get new elements, because this is what we need. We need to question the legality of these things. We need new elements, and we need accountability for the ICTR as well. Thank you for your question. It's very, very important, I think, to be able to say that those things as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Natasha.
So basically, they find another loophole. So another thing done in the dark. They were making him interrogate in France, because in France it's legal, in Belgium it's illegal. But still, I think we need to continue to follow up. Like, we cannot just stop, right here, because his case is indicative of many. And I'm glad, I like the comment you made about this being a high-profile case. You're right. We know about your dad. And now we know even more. Let me, especially with Rwandan people, if the assassination of Kizito did not happen in 2020, and the reverse would have happened to your dad, we'd be talking about your dad as we talk about Kizito now versus how we talk about your dad. There was no social media. Social media helped spread the story of Kizito. There are so many other people who have done the same thing, including who wrote their stories before the killers could tell their stories. And Kizito Mihigo, a Rwandan gospel singer who was assassinated last year, did the same thing. He wrote a book, he sent audios, and he told his story. Before him, there was Lionel Nishimwe, who was also, by the way, his story has some similarities to your dad. He was lied to by some RPF agents who befriended him from Zambia. He left Zambia, where he was in exile. He was a refugee. He was a lawyer. He had just graduated from law school. They brought him back to Rwanda. They pushed him to incriminate people he was living with in Zambia, and he refused. When he refused to do that, they killed him. But before he did that, he sent us documents and a video of his own testimony. So again, document your story. Have a plan. Do not let the killers be ahead of you. And with that, there's another person that joined from the audience, Zaituna Kamdaya. Please go ahead with your question real quickly, because we are getting really close to wrapping up the broadcast. We're running out of broadcasting time.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. It's an afternoon here. Hello, Mr. Papa Mutware, Natasha, don't need to encourage my sister, Natasha. You're very brave. Keep it up. You're very strong. And I'm glad that you can speak up. Some people are really going through some strange, horrific situations, but they can't even come forward to speak about it. I'm surprised when we will all be free and speak out, I'm really sorry that some people are relying on the so-called UN or ICTR or whatever might come up. I'm sorry, nobody's gonna speak up for you. It's just you and I, and you and I repeat. I would like to thank all the sponsors who are helping us, like the HMG, you know, the ones which Mr. Claude Gatebuke mentioned, because the whole world must know, and they have to be ashamed of themselves, the ones which we might have to rely on, but they're really disappointing. But I'm so happy that everything is coming out and people are getting to know what is the truth, and we shall all be set free. The truth shall set us free. So at this point, I would like to say sorry to my sister Natasha about everything which happened, and continue to be strong. We are together, you know, right on. And to your mom as well, kindly pass my message. I love her, and she's been strong. It's not an easy, you know, it's not an easy thing to go through, but you've stood up. Keep encouraging her, and I'm encouraging everybody who's got really some sad stories to come up and share, because we've got some liars who go around writing books of fake stories. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as in, we've been seeing people who go around writing fake stories in books, sharing fake stories. We're tired of everything. We want the truth to come out. And may your lovely dad continue to have a rest in to keep having everlasting, you know, eternal peace, you know. May his soul continue to rest in peace. And whoever suffered such horrific situations, because we've got so many stories, you know, like those ones. And my rest words are just to say that we all have to stand up and fight, because it's been a long time. All we do is just hear stories, but we don't stand up. We don't come out. Whether you are an adult or a child, it doesn't have to necessarily happen on you or anybody close to you. You have to be human. If you hear something happening to your friend, to your neighbor, take it serious. You don't have to wait. Like, we've got an example in the Bible, Thomas Didymus, who said, oh, he can't believe until he sees. If you wait until you see, I'm really sorry, you're gonna cry forever. So kindly come up, and then you help us fight all this satanism. It's evil. It's evil. Anyway, I can say a lot, but because of time, I'm so thankful that you gave me this chance to say something. And
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really, just 1 minute for a comment and a question. We talked about how Natasha, your dads, and Kizitos, and the others, and a few others were high profile. There's also another high profile only in Rwanda, and another case, the Bahati Musa, a poet who's been missing for 3 months, and the world needs to know his story because a lot of his poetry was in Kinyarwanda. This man has been missing for 3 months now in Rwanda, and again, Rwanda is a highly surveilled and a highly controlled country that, for sure, the authorities in Rwanda know where he is, and everybody should ask the question. Should not ask the question. We should not ask where is Bahati, because that, to me, is a lazy thing to do. We need to actually say, show us Bahati. Show us Bahati. And with that, I also want to recognize a couple of things. We have You and I talk show saying that exposing the abusers and the bullies is the beginning of getting justice. Thank you for putting this out. And we have Lyndon Wilberg, who is also going to be on the panel next week. Our solidarity, he's our Korean brother, says, Kwame here, much gratitude, Natasha, for your courage, and so sorry about the tragedy that your family has endured. Know that you are not alone. Love and solidarity to you and your family. He's a member of Friends of the Congo in Atlanta, and your story is now not only in Belgium or Rwanda or in the Rwandan community, but it's in America, it's in the Caribbean, it's in South America, as you can see, just right now.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I don't know if there was no question that came through. So we'll take one last question from Pacific, and then we'll go on to wrap up the program. Pacific, you have 1 minute to make your comment, ask your question.
Not a question. I'm so sorry for what happened to Natasha, to you and the entire family. But I want to appreciate your attitude. You refuse to be silent. You refuse to hide your history. Be strong and let your own light shine. Actually, your presence automatically liberates others who are still in the darkness. Be strong, you are blessed. Thank you.
Ready? Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Natasha, for everything that you shared. Thank you, everyone in the audience that's sent comments, that asked questions, that interacted with Natasha, that provided her support. And the only people that we're hearing from right now are the people on social media. But we also have people who are watching on your local televisions. We thank you for following this program. And especially really important, I think, if you are hearing this story and want to show solidarity with Natasha, please share the story. Not only Natasha's story, but other stories. You know, we have so many stories that we've shared here of hidden things that have happened in hiding that need to see the light. So show your solidarity. It's nice to send a private message, but it's really, really much more important to show support publicly. So with that, Freeman, if you have anything else to add before we give Natasha her concluding remarks, I want to quickly go back to the Friends of the Congo statement, one of our sponsors, and recognize our sponsors: Black Star News, Friends of the Congo, HMG Network, and Aglan. But I want to go back to the statement again from Friends of the Congo before we wrap it up, that says, "Comrades, Nakba, 1948 to 2021 and beyond. Today, we lift up the memory of the great catastrophe. We also stand in solidarity with our long-suffering brothers and sisters in Palestine. We call on all of us who value the principles of human rights and dignity to rally to this urgent call at a time such as this, when each minute can be measured in lives lost, buildings and homes destroyed, and land captured. We call on those whose governments fund the forces of terror that occupy Palestine, who provide the political license for this ongoing slaughter, to demand that their representatives call for the defunding of this violent colonial campaign being waged by the apartheid regime. We call on the international community to live up to its pledge of never again after the end of the Imperial War in 1945. We honor Patrice Lumumba's message in relation to our people in the Congo and find it commending that we raise our voices and act as much as we can to support the Palestinian people in this hour of need." And the message from Patrice Lumumba was, "We are not alone. Africa, Asia, and the free and liberated peoples in every corner of the globe will forever remain at the side of millions of Congolese who will not abandon the struggle until the day when there will be no more colonizers and no more mercenaries in our country." And the statement continues, "Our solidarity is forever informed by our ancestor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s noble observation that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Friends of the Congo, Atlanta. Thank you so much, Friends of the Congo, for sending this message. Again, my gratitude to our sponsors. And want to go back to Natasha and Freeman. You can wrap up the program after Natasha speaks. And Natasha, to conclude, is just, what message would you like to leave everybody with now that you have shared your story with the world? How do you feel about sharing your story with the world? How do you feel about your story being now in Asia and Africa and Europe and South America and North America and in Asia Pacific parts of the world? And the support that you have, and the fact that now people know the truth from your own mouth, from your own face, from your own soul, and that this story is not being told by the perpetrators. How do you feel about that? And what message would you like to leave with everybody that followed this program?
Wow, how I feel first. I feel overwhelmed. Thank you so much for your kind words. Zaituna, Pacifica, you just made me cry again. Ali, I'm so grateful. I dare not look on social media. I'll look after that. I feel already, I feel relieved. I feel the words, that your kind words. So thank you so much. I also know that I don't have to respond to every single tweet and accusation now. My story is here. If you want to understand what happened to me or my dad, here it is. So thank you, HMG, and all the sponsors for offering me this opportunity, and Claude for being you. So this is so. I feel like it's the first day of the rest of my life, because as of today, my story is out here. As of today, I've told my story. And I encourage everybody to do so. And my takeaways from this, what I would like to share is the very first element is to actually do tell your story. My dad taught me that by writing his own letter. He told his story. So don't let any other person tell your story. Do it for yourself. Tizito did it. Lionel did it. Let's all have this habit of making sure that your story is told, and by yourself. Girugira, all these initiatives. Let's remember, it saves lives. It's not just for the sake of it. Tell your story because somebody else will tell it for you if you do not. So that's my very, very first key takeaway. I think it's had it not been for that, we would still be arguing and back and forth on whether or not my dad confessed or not. So that's my very first key takeaway. The second one is educate yourself, because in order for you to understand the situation, it may be complicated, but still do put the work in there. Do some reading. Go check some resource. Listen to people. People tell their stories. Listen to them and understand something. Pick up something from them, because it's important to educate yourself and do that effort. Because otherwise you'll still be missing that info, be like, oh, this just happened, but I don't understand. You have to get your work done. You have to educate yourself. I think that's the next thing after. And of course, before you get organized, you have to have some solid information. So that's very important, I believe, in this process, is to understand what is at stake, is to get your history right, get your facts together, and open your mind and listen. And the other thing I'd like to emphasize is speak up. Speak up is not always easy, but please do not remain silent, because remaining silent is being an accomplice to whoever is trying to do anything that has to be done in the dark. Red flag. If he has to remain silent in order to succeed, just ask yourself, what are we doing? So if you remain silent, you're enabling the perpetrators. Had my mom not followed through to the advice of my dad's best friend and the investigators, and not sound the alarm in the media and everywhere, had we not done these protests, we wouldn't even know the little that we know today. So speak up. It may not be easy, but do not remain silent, because you are enabling the perpetrators and the oppressors of this world. Fourth point, is show up. Remember when I told you that we used to do these weekly protests?
Preach.
Whenever I recognize a face of someone who was there, it may not be a personal relationship, but in my heart, I know damn well that person was there. There is this importance when you are facing these situations where people think that you have all you need. So people looking from the outside think, hey, this family is well surrounded. They got this. The need of being present is not something that you should neglect, because when you're in that situation, although you may seem surrounded, you're traumatized. You are You have no idea. You are disoriented. You have no idea what you're doing. Nobody goes through this and say, hey, I knew exactly what I was doing. No, you do not. Every single help, every single support, every single showing up matters in those times. So hey, don't hesitate. If you think, hey, you may be overcrowding them, it's okay. Go overcrowd them. Just show up. The contrary is being absent, and trust me, absence, you remember it. You do not forget the absence of somebody that you counted on. I can tell you, I see faces, I recognize them, and I still have this warm feeling in my heart and say, hey, we're together. Up until today, it's been a decade, over more than a decade now, and I still have this, how do you say, gratefulness. I still feel this in my heart. So show up. You may not think you're doing much, but it matters to the people who are suffering. It matters. If it is a phone call, if it's a protest, whatever it is that you should, it could be attending a ceremony of a person that you don't know personally. Just go. If you feel the need to, go, because the family appreciates the support. And maybe one last thing that I would like to share with the audience, what my dad taught me through his death, through his demise, through all this torture, through everything that he went through. Do not compromise the truth. Do not compromise your values. You only have that. That's who you are. Stay with the truth. Stay with your values. If you start compromising, it may start like this. It will end up like that. You won't have a stop. That's what I thought, and that's what I live by today. And that's what I would like to share with whoever is following. Try, do your best. Tell your story, educate yourself, speak up, show up, do not compromise with the truth and values. Thank you, Claude. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Free. I hope I didn't take too long, but this has been amazing. Thank you for allowing me to have this conversation. So glad we did.
Natasha, I just want to ask you one more favor. Can you set an automatic reply on your emails, your text messages, your WhatsApp, and every app that you use to respond to anybody that wants to thank you privately for telling your story? We're saying show up, for them to go and do it publicly. Don't do it in private. If you want to thank Natasha, if you want to show her support, show your support publicly, because that is the big lesson that we learned here. And there's a quote from MLK that says, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And again, there's another saying that says, the measure of a person's character is shown in times of controversy, where they stand in times of controversy. And there's more, where adversity does not build character, it reveals character. So all of that, I hope everybody that wants to thank Natasha, that you will do it publicly. And that everybody that wants to support Natasha, that you will show the public support. And anybody that wants to tell her story, that you will share this story, that her story goes out as she told it. I want to turn this over to Clément, my co-host, and Freeman, the host, the very host of HMG. To close this out, I just want to say thank you again to our sponsors and all of you in the audience, wherever you're watching from.
Yeah, thank you, Claude. And thanks each and every one of you in the audience for the advices, for the sweet words for Natasha and for the cause. A big shout out, man. I can't say that enough, but Natasha, it's just Mimi was saying in the comments that you did that. It's not only the testimony, but how graceful you say it, and the strength you showing to the world. It's incredible, man. I'm humbled to see that and to be here to witness it. So yes, to end this, my take, I will put the emphasis on what you said, that write your own story. Can you imagine the stories that we're supposed to know that we don't know? that were not written, that people didn't say, that, when you feel it's time, just put your own narrative on paper or give it to a friend, like your father did, or just put it out there. Because the system we're fighting, man, they just chronicle riots. They will invent something. They will put fake evidences on the street. So just put your truth somewhere to be found, like your father did, like Lionel did, like or many others did, like Kizito did as well. So yes, this is it for me today. But thank you very much again. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Clement. Thank you.
And Freeman, if you can wrap it up for us.
I am so exceedingly humbled, Natasha, because what you have done today will be here for so many thousands of years to be. We've made it a point to make sure that our stories get to be told. It's been 27 years, at least 27 years, since the Rwandan history has been cherry-picked, partially written. Some families have been written on, such as Natasha's family. The world doesn't know the full story, and we've made it a point to speak up with no apologies from anyone. And I'm so humbled by Natasha and her family to have come through today. And those of you who have helped Natasha, those of you who have been there for all of us as we speak our own truth, our way, the truth, but nothing but the truth. We are going to hit, to pound it. We are going to pound it. And I'm just so grateful that now it's our time. And I just want to tell all you perpetrators out there, we're not for sale. We will speak our truth. We will tell our stories. And it is going to go as far as the ocean can reach. And I just want to encourage each and every one of you who have a story to tell. Do come through. We will speak your story. We will tell our story. And I'm so humbled, and I just want to say thank you for all of you, and hope that that this conversation that we have brought to you today has been helpful, has opened you up to another side of Rwandan story that you've never encountered. And I just want to say we love all of you guys, especially those of you whose family have been perished. We will dig you up from the grave, and we will keep your stories alive. The same way Natasha fought so hard to bring back her, her family's respect. Her dad and everyone who's been tainted as a genocidaire has been going through all of this. So I am so grateful to all our sponsors and everyone who's made this event possible. And I just want to tell all our families, we love you, we love you, we love you. And until next time, we should come through and check out next weekend. We are going to continue to have all these conversations day in and day out, again, with no apologies. We will not apologize for our truth. And we are going to hammer it. We are going to hammer it. We are going to hammer it by all means necessary. So I'm grateful again. I am Freeman Singirankabo with HMG Network. Thanks to all our affiliates for having broadcast these amazing stories. And stay tuned for the rest of the stories throughout the year. We are not going to stop. Goodbye for now.